Hey guys, my name is Paul Canavan, concept artist, illustrator, art director, and I thought it'd be fun to do a wee free tutorial based on my brainstorm piece I did here for the group on Facebook. It's a really cool concept, you know, taking a map essentially into a game level. Very good practice if you want to get into game design. I mean, this sort of thing crops up quite often. So you can see here I've got a couple of references up. I basically pulled up some images of jungles and stuff and ruins beforehand. Just kind of to put some stuff into my head. I didn't go in with a real idea of what I wanted to paint here. It was more a case of look at some images, get some stuff into your head, and then start playing around. It's all in black and white, so it's actually a little bit easier. You don't need to consider colour. You can just focus on the forms, focus on the shapes you want to create. I do have a pretty bad cold at the moment, so I apologise if I sound like I'm going to die at any point. Fairly simple composition. I want to get these ruins in at the background, sort of give a feeling of scale here. You can see in the game level on the bottom right hand corner, there's a lot of ways this could be interpreted. I'm actually tempted to do another one at some point, but I'm just trying to get a feel for a bit of a flow. You know, use this water at the sort of in the center. I'll put a whole bunch of reflection on that, and you know, cheap trick to make it look really cool. Playing with rocks right now. Because I'm going for quite a central composition, with all of the lines pointing towards these rocks at the back where the ruins are be. I really want to nail down the shapes here, and I try out quite a lot of stuff. Variations on light and shape. And just being bold, you know, using big brushes, not worrying too much. You can see I'm zoomed at, I think, about 30% most of the way through this piece. I'll take it in near the end, just to add some final details, but generally I work pretty small. It forces you to focus on the big shapes and not worry too much about little niggly details and stuff. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it before, but that first impression, that first thing someone sees, it's kind of it's the most important part, you know, especially nowadays when we're uploading work to Facebook and Twitter all the time. What you really want is something simple that reads small. You know, I want to be able to look at a piece of art and know, you know, within seconds if it's a cool thing that I want to look up closer. So here I am just starting to go through my references a little bit. I actually hadn't done much photobashing in a while, so this was kind of a bit of trial and error here. You know, I'm applying stuff on multiply layers, overlays, just trying to build up some texture. I noticed that a lot of the pieces people had submitted were quite matte painting-esque, so I figured I'd kind of go that way as well. It's a fun challenge, you know. It's good to use photos from every now and then. It's just a really nice way to quickly put a lot of detail into your work. Waterfalls became quite a repeated theme in this. I mean, to be fair, it's a pretty generic landscape. There are waterfalls and trees and huge rocks, you know, the sort of simple movie stuff that people find attractive, but it's not exactly pushing the boat out in terms of design. The problem with using photos is that it can be quite difficult to match the scale, especially if you're trying to do something quite quickly. This whole piece took 3 hours in total. As you can see, I've sped it up a wee bit. I'm not that fast. But yeah, trying to get the scale correct can be quite difficult, and it's actually something I struggled with for quite a while in this piece. Just trying to work out how large I wanted the environment to be. See, I'm putting an atmosphere behind objects to push them back into the space. I do that a lot as I go through. I'll quite often paint in a mountain, say, push some atmosphere in front of it, paint some more details, push some more atmosphere in. It just really helps you sell that feeling of scale. You see that there? Just starting to put in some extra atmosphere. I must admit, I've never been too good at the audio for these pieces. Sort of run out of things to say, so I hope you're not too bored. I actually would quite like to do a Gumroad tutorial at some point, but I need to practice talking into a microphone first of all, so I don't sound like a nutcase. Still just playing around with this this composition. I'm not quite feeling it yet. Typically, it takes me a good while to really figure that stuff out if I'm working in this way. But I mean, working with photos is actually quite relaxing. You can kind of switch your brain off and just plop stuff down and see how it looks and paint around it and paint over it, as long as you're keeping it dirty. Real matte painting work is very painstaking. I think a lot of people don't realise how difficult it really is. I certainly at one point had aspirations to be a matte painter, and then quickly realised that it was far more time. What's the term? It was far too hard. Go brain. As I say, I've got a pretty bad cold right now, and I'm a little bit out of it. So here I'm starting to put in the ruins. No real consistency of theme right now. I'd actually, at this point, forgotten that it was supposed to be a jungle scene. So yeah, you can see now I'm starting to actually think about Aztec ruins and looking at images from the Amazon and places that are actually valid. Some stuff from India. I'm just kind of layering it in there. This is more of a base for me to paint on top of right now. Building up some texture so that if I squint my eyes I can start to see cool forms. These pillory obelisk things stay in pretty much to the end. You can see I'm using the shapes of these mountains to pull your eye where I want you to go. Sort of really simple composition stuff. The sweeping curve you can see in the bottom right hand corner of the shore will pull you into the center. And just generally making sure that all the lines in the piece kind of go where you want them to look. I'm only really using one light source here. I played around with the idea of having a secondary light source, but for ease of readability, I just went with a single one eventually. But that's still to come. Here's when the central light theme comes through. I decided that it might be a nice idea to go kind of more abstract with this and push these huge mountains in the background. Kind of reminds me of the sort of Guild Wars 2 artwork. I've always been a huge fan. And Daniel Decoux is one of my favourite artists. All of those guys are just far too good. Theo Prinz has been my obsession of late as well, so a lot of those kind of themes coming in here. And I'm instantly happy with this as well. It's funny, the second you get that thing that makes the painting work for you, it just all falls into place and it all feels great. So I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with this island in the center. Again, this is to do with the scale issues I was talking about earlier. There was a weird disconnect between the shore on the right, which feels quite close to you, and then that rocky bit in the center. It's hard to tell how big that is. I think eventually I actually get rid of it altogether, which helps a lot. You can see now that we've got that large pillar of light. The whole composition is starting to read better. Everything's pushing towards the light. Go towards the light. Again, trying to place something here that will give us a sense of how large this thing is. I didn't eventually put a character into this piece. Traditionally, you know, for like a concept art illustration, you'll want to have a character or something in there as a scale reference. Having a thing that you understand the size of will help to make the whole painting read better. Because as soon as you can see the size of a human compared to these enormous rocks, you understand how fast the environment is. But in the end, I didn't bother. Sometimes it can be fun just to leave it up to the viewer's imagination. I believe I'm coming up to the midpoint now. Usually about this time I'll take a break. It can be really useful to go away and just refresh your head. Refresh your head? Sure. You know, just to go and get some fresh air, have a drink, whatever, and come back and look at the painting with fresh eyes. And then you'll notice I'm flipping the canvas constantly as I work, which is another really good way to quickly see any stupid details you've messed up. It's the equivalent of flipping, you know, putting a mirror in front of your painting or whatever. And I do it a lot, so I apologize. It's probably horrible to watch. I'm just kind of used to it by now. I have a shortcut. My F1 shortcut is set to flip. I also have ones to flip 90 degrees and vertically, but I use them less often. Yeah, there you go. Time for a break. Here we are checking in some filmic aspect ratio just to get a feel for it. Typically, I went away and came back and, you know, hated a bunch of stuff and had a bunch of ideas. So I decided it might be kind of cool if there were these little outcrops above the ruins with little waterfalls on them. Just something to some detail there so your eye has something to look at rather than just this white thing and then poorly detailed ruins. This is kind of just the detail phase, really. Just starting to look at each of the areas in the composition and just kind of jump between them. You notice I don't stay on one area for long. I'll, you know, play around with this mountain here and then jump over to the shore and just kind of noodle around on all the different parts of the painting. I'm also going fucking nuts with the waterfalls right now. I think I toned that back. I hope I toned that back, 'cause it's really bad. Like I say, it's actually a pretty generic painting. I wasn't hugely happy with it, but it's very easy to, once you've worked on something for more than about half an hour, you kind of forget what it looks like. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's very interesting. It's easy to scrap paintings because of that, because you forget that someone coming to it fresh might think it's really cool or might see stuff that you forgot about or got bored of. Here I am just playing around with the secondary light source coming in from the right. But I think I think it stays in to an extent, but it was kind of getting in the way of the composition. Because I want this to read really well and really quickly, that single light source thing is pretty handy. Starting to play around with these mountains here. Trying to pull up some references. There's some textures. Yeah. So adding in those rocks there is instantly given this piece of scale, like I was saying earlier. Because there are rocks there in the water, you can kind of start to guess at how big they are. I also messed around with these trees, because I noticed there were trees on the map on this area. Again, I'm trying to follow this map throughout the piece. Right now I kind of remember it because I've been working on it for a while, but I do bring it back up in a little while just to double check that it's not total garbage. And actually this right hand side is total garbage, so luckily I do fix it towards the end. That little white figure down there was just a quick scale reference for myself, just so when I'm painting anything else in the scene I can see this white smudge and go, right, that's a human. How big is this parakeet or whatever? I don't think there are no parakeets in this painting, as far as I recall. Actually, maybe there are. Don't want to spoil it for you. This was a cool thing. I was just bashing this in because I wanted some trees, and I couldn't be fucked painting them. But I actually really loved the shoreline. But again, because I was trying to stick to that image, I couldn't just go off and add a stupid shoreline for my own pleasure. So I end up filling that in and making it conform to the level layout. It's interesting treating this as a game design task, because actually in studio I would never paint anything nearly this detailed. Most concept work, or at least most of my concept work, is incredibly rough. You know, literally just enough information to sell whatever the thing is to whoever I need to sell it to. Like if you had some executives coming in to make a decision about budget, then perhaps you would go this far or further than this. I mean, this was only 3 hours. Give it another 2 hours and it could have been really polished. But for general game art, for sort of selling this to the designer or pushing it to a modeler, I wouldn't go this far. It would probably be line work with some rough values on top of it. It's because I'm lazy. Okay, so you notice I got rid of that middle island probably a while ago. I've been talking, so I haven't really been concentrating. So that's starting to work nicer. I actually like having more water to play with, because it means we can do more stupid reflection. Here I am just starting to place the ruins, a hint of the ruins. They're quite far back, so I pushed a lot of atmosphere in there, which means there actually is not much detail on those at all. But hopefully you just kind of get a hint of them. Again, if I were to spend another couple of hours, we'd probably really bring those out, and, you know, because they are one of the focal points of the scene. There's an awesome cave photo that I think I've used for textures 100 times. I actually don't typically work with textures anymore. That's something I used to do much more of. But in the last few months I've kind of become obsessed with trying to paint everything and not use photo texture. I actually find it's much more rewarding. I do like using Photobashing techniques. We have Nathan Drake. I thought I'd put him in for lols. But actually in the end I decided that it was shit. But no, I actually do. I really like using photo textures. Like I say, it's very relaxing. Very simple way to work. once you understand how to compose things with them. But yeah, I tend to find that at the end of the day, when I finish a piece that I've painted from scratch, whatever the fuck that means, I actually get more enjoyment out of it, more pleasure out of it. So yeah, I just killed Nathan. I wasn't feeling it. Just putting on these reflections a wee bit. Still wasn't happy with this left-hand side, or right-hand side, depending on where I have it oriented anytime. I think I actually delete everything I was doing here. That happens quite a lot. You'll go off on a tangent and try and fix something, and then half the time you go back to the original version and it's the best one. That's definitely the case here. It was just getting overcomplicated and the values weren't reading properly. Because we're kind of simulating your eyes looking at the light, technically all that stuff would be pretty much black anyway. It would be very dark anyway. So I didn't really want to have a bunch of detail in the foreground, because that's not where I want you to be looking. I want you to be looking right in the center, where those white lines converge. More atmosphere, which again I think gets deleted when I throw my little strop and delete that area on the right. It's just shit. It's just a mass of noise, and I hate it. And that's one of the reasons I prefer painting to using photo texture, is that I find it easier to control things like trees, to break them down into sort of bigger shapes, rather than it just being this mass. A mistake a lot of people use when they paint trees, or I see, and I've probably done a shitload of it as well, is that they just use these super detailed brushes set to scatter and just kind of mosh it all over the place, and it just grabs your attention too much, and it quite often just looks like a big splodge. It's better to look at some sort of classic painters and see how they treat trees. I don't know if you can hear that. It sounds like someone's being murdered outside. You can but hope. Here's some birds, because what concept painting would be complete without birds? And at this point, I think I've finished, which is naive, because I end up going on a stupid tangent and fixing a bunch of stuff. Pretty sure I completely redo the reflection in the water as well. It's not bad. I think I wanted to cut away at that shoreline in the foreground a little bit. And here I am fixing that island that is just in front of the main mass on the map. Just some spiky nonsense. Spiky nonsense. There you go. Sexy reflections. I mean, all I'm really doing there is grabbing the area I want, flipping it upside down and applying motion blur set to 90 degrees on it, just to pull it down a bit. It's a really cheap way to do a reflection, and it only really works from this sort of perspective. But it does instantly make your painting look way cooler, and it's really cheeky and shit. But it was a chance to just fix that, the flow of the composition a wee bit, and get more of that bounce highlight. And that's about it. Pretty much there now. Oh, that is it, apparently. Okay, there you go. I hope you learned nothing.